Alright, let me set the stage. The date was March 21st, 2021. I had just finished boiling down my largest batch of maple sap to date, 28 gallons in one go. I boiled for 12 plus hours on the evaporator outside. I had boiled it down enough that I was able to fit it in my pot to bring inside and finish on the stovetop. I've done it this way countless times. I'll bring my pot in, still ripping hot, throw it on the stove, and finish the boiling process off inside. Now, it still takes a couple hours, 3-4 hours maybe, depending on how much is in there and what the sugar content is, to finish boiling it inside, which means I'm boiling into the night, into the morning in some cases, like this situation. So I've got my pot on the stovetop, Sarah and the kids go to bed, I say, see you later, I'll finish this up and I'll come to bed in the morning. So, I make myself comfy, set my alarm on my phone so I wake up and check the sap so I can catch it when it turns over to syrup and pull it off the burner. Judging by how much sap I have in my pot, I know it'll be a couple hours until it's done. Now, this is where I made a critical error. This was the largest batch of sap I'd boiled down to date. Probably, let's see, 8 gallons over what I normally do maybe. So the concentration of sugar in the pot is much higher than it usually is, which ultimately means it's gonna finish before it normally would. So I set my alarm thinking, okay, this will take a couple hours to finish. Stick my hat over my eyes, that would have been cooler if it actually worked, and take a little snooze. 1:30 a.m., my alarm goes off. Turn my alarm off and look at the stove. From my spot on the couch, past the valley of children's toys, I see my pot on the stovetop boiling over all over the stove. There's steam and smoke. I mean, look at my pitch ceilings. It was filled with smoke down to the hallway and was going down the hallway. Thick smoke. I look at my pot and my pot says, dude, you effed up. I jump off the couch, run to the kitchen, grab the pot. Mind you, it's boiling over right now. It's turned to syrup minutes ago. I probably missed it by 5, maybe 10 minutes. It turned to syrup. And when it turns to syrup, it foams up basically, and it'll go over the pot, which it did. So it's just pouring over the sides of this pot. The burner has a thick layer of sugar built up on it. Caramelized sugar just stuck to the stovetop. There's smoke just pouring off this pot. I've already got the fan on because it releases so much humidity into the room. I've already got the fan running. So the fan, unfortunately ours doesn't exit outside the house. It just vents back into the room up here. It does have a carbon filter in here, but the fan is just spitting smoke back into the room. So I take the pot, I slide the pot off the burner, and instantly the burner ignites. I've got flames like 12 inches tall on top of my stove. Flames, 1 a.m. in the morning, 1:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm still asleep and I'm like, holy shit, my house is on fire. At this point, the smoke had made its way under this lip and down the hallway and set off this first smoke detector. Again, 1:30 a.m., family's all asleep, I'm out here burning our house down. I run down the hallway. I pull the batteries out of the smoke detector. I pull the batteries out of all the smoke detectors. There's already a fire. I already know this. I don't need the smoke detectors anymore. I stick my head in the room. Hey, Sarah, just so you know, I boiled over the sap. There might be a little bit of smoke. I go back down the hallway. Alright, at this point, the smoke, I can't believe how quickly the smoke was being produced. It's down to my belly button. Thick smoke, I can't see through it. I'm just looking at a wall of smoke. My house is filled with shitty smelling smoke. Like burnt sugar smell. I don't know if you've ever smelled burnt sugar, but it doesn't smell very good. So I come back to the stove. I should have mentioned before I ran down the hallway, I put the flames out. I took well, it's in the dishwasher right now, but I took a big metal spatula and I just started scraping all the sugar off of the burner. This lip on my stovetop here, all of this was filled with syrup. So every time I'd scrape some off, new syrup would go on and ignite, and I ended up just blowing really hard on it, and I put the flames out, and it was just a bunch of little embers on top of the stove then. And then I went down the hallway and turned off the smoke alarms and stuff. But anyway, so I came back. I've got a pot sitting here full of syrup. I've got syrup all over my stovetop, smoke everywhere, and I'm just like, I'm panicking. I'm having a panic attack. So I go back down the hallway. Hey Sarah, there was kind of a fire. There's a lot of smoke. I could use your help out here. Sarah comes out of the bedroom, and I'm just like, hey, I know there's kind of a lot of smoke out here. It's not a big deal. I've got the fire out. It's a mess. I need your help. So it's like 1:45 in the morning at this point. Sarah and I are standing out here, down to our belly buttons in thick smoke. I'm just shaking. Like, what just happened? What's going on? I feel awful because that morning Sarah started her new job. It was her first day at her new job, and I've got her up with a house filled with smoke. So I'm like, you know what? You know what's going on. Just go back to bed, shut the door so the smoke doesn't go in the bedrooms. Shut the door, and I'll clean this up. I'll take care of it. Sarah goes back to the bedroom. In order to clean my stovetop, I've got to get this pot off of it, right? So I take my jars, which I had already sanitized. I was all set up and ready to go. I take my syrup, I pour the syrup into my jars, I just throw the pot immediately into the dishwasher because it's just got caked sugar all over the bottom, burnt to it. And I get some paper towels and I just start wiping as much of that syrup up as I can, throwing it right into the trash, get a wet cloth, start cleaning all this up. There's syrup on the freaking floor, it's all sticky, everything is sticky. So I'm cleaning up the countertops. Sarah shoots me a text. She's like, I don't think the kids should be here anymore with the smoke in the house. I don't want them inhaling it and getting sick. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Admittedly, I'm like, no, don't take the kids anywhere else. Then we're just making this into a huge deal. And I'm embarrassed, and how could I let this happen? But I realize we got to get the kids out of here. There's too much smoke in the house. So Sarah takes the kids, goes over to her parents' house. I don't think she slept the rest of the night. I know she didn't. She told me she didn't. So I'm back at home feeling awful for everything that happened. I finished cleaning up. I opened all the windows in the house. It's still spring. It was probably like 40-some degrees outside. I opened all the windows and I'm just airing out the house. I had the windows open for a couple hours in the middle of the night. Thank God it was in the middle of the night, because had this happened during the day, all my neighbors would have been staring at my house, just pouring smoke out the windows. Like, what is going on over there? Probably would have had the fire department called over here. It would have been a much bigger deal. Fortunately, it happened in the middle of the night. I caught it right away. Nobody got hurt. Nothing was damaged other than I had to replace the carbon filters in my microwave fan because they were ruined. They reeked. Anytime you'd run the fan after that incident, it just made the house smell bad again. I end up going to bed. I wake up the next morning and I work that day. I've been working from home for over a year now. So I sit down at the computer and I've got the windows open all day. Again, still not very warm. I'm freezing my butt off at my computer working, trying to air this house out so it doesn't smell like a combat zone. Fortunately, the smell aired out pretty quickly. I had family come over later that day, the day after that, and nobody could smell it. It was just burned into my senses. All that day when I was working, I felt like I was back in high school and I had my first cigar, a big fatty 12-inch cigar, and I just inhaled the whole thing. I felt awful. I felt nauseous, and just my gut was just ruined all day. But fortunately, the house didn't stink too bad. It aired out pretty good. So, lesson learned. I will no longer be boiling sap down in the middle of the night. It's better just to cool the sap overnight and pick it up the next day and start boiling it again then. I liked doing it all in one sitting just to get it over with, and when you bring it inside, it's already ripping hot and just picks up a boil right away on the stovetop. But it's not worth losing your house over. So, scary incident, close call. We're all okay though. Lesson learned. Disappointingly though, this is what I ended up with for syrup. Again, this was my largest batch ever, so I probably should have ended up with 10, maybe 12 pints of finished maple syrup, and this is what I ended up with. 4 3/4. All of the rest of it burned on my stovetop, which is just, it's heart-wrenching. You spend literally a day boiling this shit down. It takes forever. It's a long process, and I ruined it in the last minutes of the process. This is what I got out of it. I tried it actually I waited a day to try and air out my senses. I tried it like 2 days after the incident, and I could just, at the end of the flavor experience, I could pick up some burnt. And I don't know if it was just me, because I had some family members try it and they said it tasted fine. I can taste a little bit of burnt on the end of the flavor. Back of your tongue, when you finish ingesting it, you can taste a bit of burnt. I'm not comfortable leaving this in this form, basically. So, the positive of this whole experience is that I get to try something new. I'm gonna take the syrup that I've got here and put it back in the pot, put it back on the stove, and attempt to make maple sugar. I've never done this before. God granted me with this great lesson learned experience, and now I have the opportunity to take this syrup further and turn it into sugar. So that's what I'm gonna do today. The first step in making maple sugar is taking a stick of butter and rubbing it around the inside of your pot. This will prevent it from boiling over, which probably would have been helpful in my earlier situation. As I mentioned, when you take it to the point of becoming syrup, it becomes foamy and will boil over. So having this layer of butter on the inside of your pot will prevent that foam from boiling over. Because in order to turn this into maple sugar, we have to take it 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit above the point at which water boils for your elevation. Okay, now the next step is taking my syrup and adding it to the pot. As your sugaring season goes on, your syrup will tend to get darker and darker and darker. Actually, before I put the last jar in here, I'll give you a comparison of my syrup throughout the season. Check this out. The jar on the left is the first batch of syrup I harvested from this season. The middle being the middle, and the one on the right being the last jar that I harvested, the last batch of syrup I made. Obviously, it gets darker and darker as the season goes on. As the season goes on, the flavor of the syrup intensifies as well. Alright, this is the last jar that I will be turning into maple sugar. A little pro tip here, as a family member didn't know how to get these off. She was really struggling with it. So something I do that it's all right here, you don't need a tool or anything, is I take the actual ring and I stick it under the seal on the lid and just pry up. Just like that, it separates the seal very easily, no tools needed, you don't hurt your fingers. Everything you need is right here with the jar. Alright, all the syrup is in the pot, so I'm going to turn the heat up to high, and fingers crossed that I don't burn my house down. That's not funny. Okay, I'm going to put my candy thermometer in the syrup so I can monitor the temperature and know at which point it will be ready to come off the stovetop. If you don't have yourself a candy thermometer, the link to this one will be in the description below. Alright, it literally just started foaming. Man, this is giving me some PTSD. There's got to be at least 2.5 inches of foam on top of the syrup right now. Looks like the butter's working though. It hit the butter line and it's not going above that. So hopefully the rest of this process, it stays right there. So I need our syrup to reach 260 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point I can take it off the burner and I'm going to put it in our mixer. Now you can either mix it by hand with like a wooden spoon and just mix. It takes a lot of work and a lot of energy. Or you can use a mixer like this. You can use a handheld, what are they, those, I don't even know what they're called. The mixers with the two of these thingies on them. Whatever, I'm not a baker. And you want to, basically that aerates it. It lets air into it, and it allows for that final evaporation of all the moisture to come out of it, turning it into granular sugar. Again, this is my first time doing it. I've never actually done it before, but in videos I've seen, it happens pretty quickly. It's pretty neat. It goes from a liquid state like that and just turns into sugar. We're coming up on 235 degrees now, and you can tell that the syrup looks different. It's boiling differently than it was before. It's much thicker, and this is kind of bringing back some memories from when I was a lot younger. My great-grandmother and I used to make popcorn balls. I don't know the recipe off the top of my head, but I remember taking some kind of a syrup, maybe it was corn syrup, I have no idea. And you'd boil it like this, get it really hot, and then you'd take your popped popcorn, you'd put it in a bowl, and you'd like pour this boiling hot syrup over the top of it, and then stick your bare flipping hands in there and make popcorn balls. They'd all stick together with the syrup. And I remember it being just, it was so painful. But the popcorn balls are pretty good. So I just want to remind you guys, if you're doing this, if you're making syrup, if you're making maple sugar, anything with sugars, it gets very hot and it's sticky, obviously. It sticks to your hands, sticks to your skin, and it'll burn. So be very careful. Alright, we've reached 260 degrees, so I'm going to carefully pour this into my mixer now. I'm going to see if I can use a spatula to get the rest of this out of there. I want to start whipping it while it's relatively hot still. And this stuff is turning into maple candy right now. Very sticky. It's like taffy. Oh yeah, that's good. All right, I'm gonna start this going. Lock it first. This has been going for a few minutes now, and it's changing color. It's becoming a lighter color. It's sounding different, kind of tacky, sticky like. It seems to be getting imparted with some air, which is going to turn it eventually into granular sugar. I tried to scoop some of the remaining syrup that was on the inside of the pan off before it hardened, and I actually made maple candies. Pretty cool. Probably could have made more of these if I had Sarah here to help me, but I'm here alone right now, and it just started hardening before I could get it all out. Starting to see the granular sugar in there forming. Oh man, that happened quick. The mixer's having a tough time now. I'm gonna amp it up a little bit. Holy smokes, look at her go. Maybe that's too much. Turn it down. You can actually see the vapor, the last bit of water coming out of that sugar right now. I'm not sure when exactly to turn this off, but it seems pretty well dry now and granular, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut it off. Now we're gonna sift it. I don't have a proper sifter, but I do have this grease splatter guard, which is a very finely knit wire mesh. So I'm just gonna set this on top of a bowl and start straining this through. Man, that was neat. It turns really quickly from liquid to solid form like this. That was fun to watch. This might just be my new favorite thing to do with maple sap. I'm just gonna use a regular old metal spoon here and just kind of try and press it through the grease shield here. So all these bigger chunks that won't make it through the strainer, I'm gonna put aside in a different bowl, and then at the very end when I've strained all this, I'm going to take the larger chunks and put it into a food processor and break them down a little bit more, and then strain it one more time, or sift it, or whatever you want to call this, filter it, I don't know. Check it out, you guys. This is granulated sugar, straight from the maple trees. Now, everything on the sides of this dish, it was cool out here obviously compared to the warm sugar that was in here, so it hardened on the side. I'm gonna try and chisel that out, throw it in here with the stuff that didn't make it through my strainer, and then process all that down so it turns into this. Well, the inside of my processor just broke. This piece is supposed to be down in there, which goes around this shaft, which spins the blades, and now it just sits on there and doesn't move while the shaft is spinning. I think I'm gonna have to finish up the rest of this with a mortar and pestle. I'm gonna take all of this sugar and start jarring it up. Now the cool thing about maple sugar, the whole process of making maple syrup is reduction. It's a lot of time, just reduction, reduction, reduction. You're taking all of the moisture, all of that water out of the sap, which leaves you with a sugar-rich syrup. Now, making maple sugar is the same thing. You're still reducing it. You're taking all that moisture out of it, like all the moisture out of it. But you actually gain something. The process of making sap is all loss. You're losing. You start with 40 gallons of sap, you end up with 1 gallon of syrup. The sugar, there's a lot of air mixed in with it, so it just takes up more space. It's cool. The whole process, you're losing something. And then at the very end, when you turn it into sugar, you're gaining something. It's pretty neat. I still can't believe I made my own sugar. That's pretty freaking cool. I'm gonna go thank my trees. Thank you. Was that weird? So as I mentioned, I still have a little bit to grind down into granular sugar, but I was able to make 3 quarts worth and some change. I wanted to show you guys this. I found this little holder here on Amazon, and it comes with a tablespoon. So it can mount on any mason jar with a regular neck. It's a pretty neat little contraption. I'll link it in the description below. So I'm gonna use this as my go-to sugar container, and then these guys will just be for long-term storage. The cool thing about granular sugar like this is it's shelf stable forever, basically. There's no moisture left in it, so this stuff is gonna last a long time if we let it. What a fun experience that was. Going from a horrendous disaster to a maple sugar success. I'm glad that I tried this. I could have gone without the scary fire incident, but when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right? When life almost burns your house down, you make maple sugar, I guess. Thank you guys for joining me today, and hope you found this entertaining, learned something from it, and maybe someday you'll give it a try yourself. Take care, everybody.